Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Howling Halloween. Welcome back, everyone, to week 2 of Howling Halloween, where we are going to talk about the 2010 Wolfman breed. Hold on, something isn't right. Okay, that's much better. Now, where was I? Ah, yes. Last week, I looked at the original Wolfman from 1941, so I figured the remake would be the next logical choice in terms of picking a werewolf film, since I'd be able to see how it compares to the original. First off, I do want to say this film is both very solid as a werewolf flick and as a remake. Some people don't know what a remake is because every single Disney one in recent years are just a shot-for-shot live-action sludge. When making a remake, it should still be similar to the original property in the sense that you can recognize that it has a couple similar elements, but overall it should be a new take on a familiar story. Otherwise, why even bother remaking it? Oh yeah, I remember why. Because
money!
As a remake of the original film, this film does a good job of both honoring the original with plenty of references, including but not limited to Larry being a good shot with a gun, being tied in a chair to see they aren't a werewolf, a large chaotic event at a camp full of Romani people, the poem, weird acid trip sequences. The people making this film were clearly passionate about it and put a lot of care into this film, which is very evident of the behind the scenes, which I highly recommend checking out. I also like they actually made some significant changes that still work but set it apart from the original. Lawrence in this film, and yes, I'm going to refer to him as Lawrence since that's what the film mostly refers to him as instead of Larry. Lawrence isn't nearly as charismatic as in the original, although I think it makes sense in the context of the story with him being committed to an asylum after witnessing the death of his mother at his father's hands. And given the quality of treatment at the time, I can't say I'm all that surprised with how he's much more quiet. But just like in the original, he's still a good man that you sympathize for, and Benicio del Toro does a good job of acting. The biggest change is probably the one that I have the most mixed emotions about, and that's Lawrence's father, Sir John Talbot, played by Anthony Hopkins. And I'm just gonna say it, he seems to be phoning it in for the majority of the scenes he's in. I mean, look at this scene.
Lawrence, Holy Mother of God.
Great stuff there, Hopkins. In the original, Sir John Talbot was a prideful man that had a significant presence to him, and as a father, while he was definitely estranged from Larry, he did still care for him, but his pride for his family name caused him to not get the best help that was available for the time. Now granted, given what was happening, it wouldn't have done much, but the ending with him having to be directly responsible for killing his son in a way that mirrors Larry killing Bela was just the icing on the tragic flavored cake. Now on the remake, the estrangement between Lawrence and Sir John is still there, but it's because Sir John was abusive towards Lawrence and his brother and sent Lawrence away to be institutionalized after witnessing his mother's dead body, who was actually Sir John killing her as a werewolf.
You killed my mother. It broke my heart to put that tumor in her head. What?
No, all right. I know that sounds bad.
But for some reason, he didn't attack his own son, despite not being able to control the beast. At least not at that point in time. I like this different take on Sir John. It almost takes the opposite approach to the original, with the original being stern and compassionate, but with the remake being cold and antagonistic. It shows the opposite side of fathers, with the depiction that, yes, some dads suck and are just the worst. My dad never came home with a milk. You think that's bad? Remember the time I witnessed my father kill my own mother as a werewolf? But that's not the biggest change relating to Sir John. That would be that he is the werewolf that transmits the curse to Lawrence, and ends up being the supervillain to Lawrence, leading to a big awesome werewolf fight.
CGI fight coming up.
Okay, to be fair, this fight is actually mostly practical and it is a lot of fun. Even the fight has a nice little bit of symbolism to it, with Sir John's transformation being very quick, as well as him tearing off his shirt, representing him accepting the beast and that he welcomes the transformation and what it brings. Whereas Lawrence's transformation is not as quick and much more painful as he tries to fight it. And when he does transform, he still has his shirt on, representing how he still tries to hold on to some bit of his humanity. It's good little stuff like that establishes the characters in a film that can add a little more to the story. All the werewolf action in this movie is a lot of fun, with plenty of horror and gore. The speed and power of the werewolf is captured masterfully, making it truly feel like a force of nature. And the horror is mixed. A lot of it comes from jump scares, so it really just depends on how you think about them, if you think they are good or just a cheap way to get a scare. Me personally, I think some of them work, but others you totally see coming. It's a very repetitive formula where it's, oh, fake jump scare with something that isn't scary, and then the werewolf pops out. That's literally every jump scare in this film, so depending on how you feel about that, that's gonna determine your enjoyment of this film.
Just hold me. It's not real. It's not real.
The werewolf designs are also both very good, with the makeup on them being incredible and definitely worthy of that Oscar win for best makeup by Rick Baker and his team, who actually makes a cameo in the film. These designs are clearly inspired by the original and yet still retain a unique style, with each one looking like their human counterpart, if only slightly, but enough to set them apart from each other. The CGI, on the other hand, well, it doesn't help that this movie had a flurry of production problems, including multiple directors, but the decision to use CGI as prominently as it was a Universal Studios last minute do it behind Rick Baker's back kind of decision. So yes, the poor CGI is a studio problem, not a skill problem, which is far too common for VFX workers nowadays. Danny Elfman also kills it with the score in this film. I enjoy it so much that I've added it to my own Halloween musical playlist. I'm not musically inclined, so I can't really go into depth on why it's awesome, but I really enjoy it, and I think it adds to the overall atmosphere of this film. So with all this praise, it seems like this is a pretty solid movie across the board, right?
Dick. Ha! No.
This movie definitely suffers from some problems, and your enjoyment of this movie is pretty much going to be determined by these things. First off, this film has some really corny dialogue. It's not frequent, thankfully, but when it's there, it stands out like a construction worker in the middle of a Starbucks.
Rules, Mrs. Kirk. They're all that keep us from a dog-eat-dog world, you know.
You will not become a werewolf. Any more than I will sprout wings and fly out of that window.
Now, if you thought the romance aspect in the original was kind of bland, then this movie's chemistry between the two is somehow even more so, having all the depth and emotional nuance of a saltine cracker. Once again, any kind of chemistry between Gwen and Larry is solely due to the actors. Emily Blunt does a really good job in this film, however, I can't help but feel strange. I can't explain it, and while I wouldn't quite say she was miscasted, mostly because she does still give a solid performance, seeing her in this role just felt off, and she is a great actress. I mean, she's absolutely awesome in Edge of Tomorrow, which overall is such a great movie. I don't know if someone else can put what I'm thinking into words, but if you understand what I'm saying, maybe you can try putting it in the comments or something. I don't know. The finale, however, does play with the interesting idea between the two. Once Gwen is cornered by the Wolfman, she tries appealing to him, and for a slight moment, her words get through to him.
It's Gwen. It's Gwen. Please.
The idea of love being able to be strong enough to reach the human part of the werewolf is honestly a really cool one, even though it does sound cheesy on paper. And the idea is there, and the execution is okay with good acting, but it's not quite as powerful as the movie wants it to be, because the romantic chemistry between them was lacking more than She-Hulk was of comedy. Hold on, that's not fair to the Wolfman. She-Hulk is a show that is really devoid of any semblance of humor.
Huh. My ass remains unwhooped.
Yeah, let's fix that.
However, the biggest problem with this film is that it's boring for long stretches and has a messy script, and no amount of good acting, fun action, or a killer score can save it from that. Now the question is it as boring as everyone makes it out to be according to Rotten Tomatoes? I mean, this thing got annihilated by critics and audiences. And yeah, the bad stuff is not good and it's pretty boring, which is probably the biggest sin a movie can commit. And while all these criticisms of it are definitely valid, I tend to look at this movie in the same way that I look at Jurassic World, which, even though that is not a true remake, it's one of those 20-year sequels that's basically reboots of a franchise. I mean, for example, both are going to be compared to the original, which still holds the test of time with their explorations of themes and impact on cinema. Both have romantic chemistry with the same amount of believability that big corporations care about people of the LGBTQ community. Both are victims of lackluster scripts. Both have characters about as bare bone as a turkey after Thanksgiving that are only carried by their actors. Both are really only defined by their big action set pieces and spectacle. And finally, both aren't very good movies. That being said, I still personally enjoy them for what they are. Cheap entertainment monster movies that don't have much but are easy to enjoy nonetheless. And that's the end of this video. Next week I'll be covering Bad Moon, a much lesser known werewolf movie than the previous two. So get ready, ladies and gentlemen, because we are in the swing of spooky month. So spank all those buttons if you want, and may you all have a great day.